This is how you do a manual partitioning in Linux. Mostly Linux operating systems will just have the same way of manual partitioning. It consists of just five main partitions, just three main ones and two optional ones, which you can do later on when you install the system and such. The five, I'm going to explain all of five of them, but like I said, two are optional. Let's start with slash. This slash, which you're going to write in the mount point, this is the root. This is the root. What does that mean? What is the root? The root is where the operating system will be stored when you install it, and where the system applications will be if you decide to install like system flatpaks as such. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but this is where the root is. It's just a slash, and that's it. And it's usually formatted in XT4. Mostly Linux system use XT4, or it can be ButcherFS, or it can be other formats that support Linux, but it can't be NTFS because NTFS is proprietary for Windows and Microsoft. It isn't open source. The size of it can vary. It's personal. You can just let's give it like 90 gigabytes. It's very like how much space do you want your root system to be, or this depends also on another partition which I'll speak of, but this is all the root partition, the main thing you should know about it. The second one is an optional one, which is slash home. The slash home, note this, slash home the partition gets created automatically when you just create the root partition. But the slash home is a place where you keep your personal files, like in Windows, where you keep the downloads, the pictures. You see the user folder with your name. That's the user folder where you keep your personal files on it. Now the slash, just the root partition. If you don't create this, the slash will be both home and your root partition. It will be both. So you store files in the root partition, and it will be partitioned as home as well, taking the same space. But it's recommended that you split it up. You make a separate home partition, which is recommended because distro hopping, of course, and if a system breaks and you have to reinstall it, this ensures that your system files won't get deleted or removed. So slash home is preferable, but it's optional. You can create it later, of course, when you just make this. It's not like the end of the world if you just make the root partition and that's it. It's not fixed. And it can be in both XTFAT or BitterFS. BitterFS can support sub-volumes, and just XT4 is just better for performance. The size of it's preferable. Like you can make it anything you like. It can vary from 50 gigabytes something. It varies. And the third partition of this, which is going to be a main one, this is the boot partition. This is where the bootloader will be, and the Linux kernel where it's going to be stored. So it's going to be in XT4 format, and this has a size of 1 gigabyte. This is usually the partition where it initializes the RAM disk and just configure the bootloader and such, and starting the operating system. It starts with that. And the next one, it can be 1 gigabyte, like I said, XT4. And the last main one, primary partition, is the boot/EFI. This is what you're gonna write in the mount point. It's gonna be in FAT32 format or EFI. These are both the same. If you see both, some distros just call it EFI, some just split it up to FAT32, but it's FAT32 actually. It's the same format. This is the directory where the UEFI is stored, and it holds the bootloader, of course. That like grub, when you boot the system, it tells you to choose between Linux, Windows. This is everything that happens. This is the first thing that starts up when you boot up your computer or press the power button something like this. Preferably, you'll make it in size 800 megabytes. It doesn't have a one. It doesn't need to be 1 gigabyte. Actually, 300 megabyte is what most systems use by default for the EFI partition, but 800 megabytes is just preferable. It's just what I prefer in the EFI. And the last one, which is going to be optional, is the slash swap. The swap partition, what is that? All right, this is weird. What is that? Okay, swap partitions, actually, when you run out of space, like memory, I mean, and RAM, the system will use it'll use two different ways, like a ZRAM swap and a normal swap. So just get split into two parts. The ZRAM and swap, normal swap, or Z swap. In short, ZRAM is just compresses the RAM usage, so it just compresses it. And the swap, look, when your space runs out of memory, like I have 16 gigabytes right now on my machine, when these 16 gigabytes gets exceed its limits, it's gonna swap out some of it to my SSD, so it's gonna work like RAM, like the main memory. So some of my SSD is gonna work as just like RAM. It's gonna be definitely slower, but it will prevent system crashes and system freezes. It's gonna be helpful. It's optional, but it's preferable. I use for myself ZRAM and swap. I use both. Z swap, it's gonna be on the size equivalent to the size of your RAM or bigger. That's gonna be. So if I open up my terminal, I just type free just tells me if I used my swap partitions. So if I used swap on, it's gonna tell me my swap partition. I have two actually. I have the ZRAM and I have this, which is the normal swap. I have 16 gigabytes. I have 16 gigabytes of physical RAM. So this is the 16 gigabytes of swap. So it's preferable for hibernation and such and stuff. A lot of stuff. Okay, the ZRAM I have is 4 gigabytes, which is I'm using right now. It's 1.4 gigabytes. It's automatically being used. I don't have control over it. I can change the priority, of course. I made ZRAM more has priority more than the actual swap, because look at this, the priority 100 minus 2. I prefer the ZRAM. It works better, but they both can work at the same time. Sure. So the swap partition, that's it. That's all you're gonna need for the split to make it. All right, let's go back to how it is when you install a physical system. Like this is a Bazite, which is a Fedora Knight based system. I'm gonna choose this hard drive, and this is a virtual machine. I'm gonna choose the advanced custom, the GUI option. So when it happens, I have this 80 gigabytes of free space. I'll just make a plus. I'll make my XC4, or I can make a BitcherFS or an XFS, which is the best one by right now. It's just the fastest, but it has so many problems. I mean, not this one. It's called the Z Flip. Not the Z Flip. I mean ZFS. Look, if I'm not mistaken, this is gonna be. I'm gonna make the root partition. I don't have to call it. I can call it anything, or I can just leave it empty. It's not really important. So I'm gonna make it like 50 gigabytes of storage. I'm gonna make because I want to make a separate home partition. So right now I have a slash the mount point, which is gonna be the. I'm telling my system this is the root partition. If I don't make a home partition, it will just take the slash and just say it's both home and slash. So you only need 3 partitions. So the next one is slash boot, which is gonna be in XT4 format. It's gonna have 1 gigabyte of size, and the label is not important. And the next one is just, let me go to the free space. The next one is the EFI, which is gonna be the boot slash EFI. Now the file system here is gonna be here. You're gonna find an option called EFI file system. I don't have it because forgot to configure. Damn it! Forgot to configure the virtual machine to use UEFI. Most computers made in the last 20 years are just made of UEFI, which is unified, right? It's called unified. What I remember, extensible firmware interface. It's like something like that. Anyway, the last 20 years computers and just made in UEFI. You're gonna find an option like FAT32 or the. Right now I have just the BIOS boot, which because I'm using a BIOS which is very old in this virtual machine. I'm gonna use anything like this and just make it to megabytes and just make it like 800 megabytes, which is the recommended size. This is not BitterFS because I don't have that. So I'm gonna imagine this is just FAT32 or EFI it's called. Not important. And then this is all you need. That's it. You can just install the system and that's about it. That's all you need. There's all the main partitions. But if you need to make a separate home partition, which is gonna be I'm gonna make it like or a swap. I'm gonna make a swap right now. I'm gonna make it 16 gigabytes, which is my physical RAM is 16 gigabytes. So I'm gonna make the swap partition 16 gigabytes. That's preferable, the /swap. And the last one I'm gonna make is a home partition. It's gonna be greater than 16, sure, it will be preferable, but 16 is just fine, it will just work. Unless you have a memory leak or something. And then the mount point will be this /home. When I make this is gonna separate the root partition from the home partition. I'm gonna make it the whole size. And that's about it, basically. This is everything you need to know about manual partitioning in all of the Linux world or Linux distros or whatever. It's the same. All of them are the same, unless it's just simple changes like the XT4 is just BitterFS instead of XT4, and that's about it. Swap and /boot EFI, all of them are just primary, and the slash is just primary. These are just optional, these two. So 5 main partitions and 3 primary ones. All right. Hope you got everything here. So that's about it, actually. See ya.